Today we're going to convert an RPR Rover into an RPR Crawler. This current system has a brushless motor in it, which is really fast, but it is hard to control at slow speeds. So the sensored system we're going to put in here is going to solve that. We're going to replace that motor with a 500 kV motor, and it's sensored. We're going to pair that with a programmable Tekin ESC. What this is going to do is give the operator great control at crawling speeds. For the motor, you're going to need a 3mm Allen wrench, and I usually use a screwdriver to do this. If you don't have experience with a screwdriver, you might want to just use hand tools, and you'll need three sizes: 3, 2.5, and 2. So go ahead and loosen the 4 screws on top of the motor. Go ahead and clip those wire ties so you can get the ESC out and disconnect the motor wires. Should be able to just pull them apart, and that motor will slide out. We're going to keep that cam, but we need to go ahead and take the pinion gear off. Sometimes it has Loctite on it, so you'll need to pry it off of there. If it's really stuck on there, you may even need to heat it up. And this one has 4 screws in it. The new one you'll only use 2 of these screws. Go ahead and save the screws to use. And there shouldn't be anything holding on the ESC except for 2-sided tape. So just pry that off of there. Take the cap off of the receiver. Don't lose the screws. It's good to remember that the black wire goes to the outside of the receiver, and the ESC wire that you're taking out is on the inside. The servo wires clear on the outside. So slot 2 for the ESC. I just keep an old chisel around to get this 2-sided tape off. It usually comes off pretty easy. You can peel it back. If you have to, you can heat it up, but usually don't have to do that. And when you take these screws out, be real careful because they're often put in with thread locker or Loctite, and you can strip them real easy. So loosen them up by hand. If you can't get them out, if you strip them, you'll have to grind them off, and that's not a lot of fun. Don't do that. Now we're going to take that cover off the gears, and that takes just a 2mm. There's 4 screws. Pop that right out. Okay, this is the 500 kV motor. This is the motor that came out of it. You notice this has 4 holes in it, and that's where this cam came off of. And the short part of the cam is at the top. It goes on like that. The top of the motor where the wires are. It's the same thing with this one. You want to mount it with the short part of this at the top and the wires here. So you'll line this up with that and put the 2 screws in it. Now, this one only has 2, but don't worry about it. What this cam does is when you put it in the mount, you can turn it and it loosens it or tightens it. Now you put this on, then put the gear on, put a little bit of Loctite on this, line the flat spot up on the shaft, and then tighten it up as tight as you can get it. So this is the censored wire. It goes from the back of the motor to the ESC. It's usually easier to put this together beforehand. Just make sure you use grease. This is dielectric grease that should be included in your kit. Put some in here, put some in the back of the motor, in the slot. When you have the cam on here, you're ready to put the motor in. You're going to put it in with the wires up, and remember how we put the cam on there. Put the ESC on, make sure it's firm. Hook up the wires white to orange, black to yellow, and red to blue. I need to hook those in so they stay in place. I always use some needle nose to pull it up through there. It's a lot easier. Go ahead and cinch it up tight. It's good to have a little slack on each side, and just snip off the wire tie. Now we're going to hook up the ESC to the receiver and put the antenna through. Remember, the antenna goes on the right side of those wires coming out. You'll see a little slot in there. And go ahead and tighten it up. I usually recommend doing that by hand because it's such small screws. Now to adjust the gears, I just use a little piece of thin paper or an old business card. Just make sure it's not too thick. Then just turn that cam until it's up against it. Make sure you keep the motor straight. We tighten it up with the middle screw first to hold it in place. Just make sure that motor stays straight as you do that. Now is a good time to test it. If it's too tight or too loose, it'll be obvious. And usually that piece of paper works just fine. Now we need to put it back together. Put the cap over the gears. Remember that takes a 2mm Allen wrench. Careful not to over tighten these. They're not very big screws, and they're just going into plastic. All right, put this thing back on, and hopefully you didn't have to grind off any bolts. And I see no reason to put Loctite on these, but you can use Loctite if you want to. It's all right to use a screwdriver, but just don't take them all the way down. You should probably hand tighten these. A couple of things you might want to consider: upgrading your springs if you can't get enough stiffness out of here. If you get a lot of wobble carrying your heavy loads, then you can upgrade this to a 50-pound spring, or you can get these suspension locks, which will hold everything in place in your suspension. The only cushion you'll have is on the tires.
Your kit comes with a hot wire, and where that goes is right here. You hook it up right here where the fan is hooked up. Remember, the black wire goes to the outside. When you put this fan wire back in, I suggest you use some grease on it. Keep it waterproof. These are a little tough to get in there sometimes, but I've even had to shave off the edge before, but I think this will go in. There we go. You'll want to make sure you have power hooked up for this, and that you've downloaded the app off the App Store, and this is what you'll get. Now, the first thing you have to do is give this power and push the button. There should be a little blue light that comes on, and that's so you can bind it. Now you just hit this button in the corner, and it's going to connect. Of course, this app works different on Android and whatever version you have, so I would suggest that you watch a video on YouTube or something from Tekin about all the things that this will do. It's blue, so it's bound now. You have cell count 2S. This is a 3S LiPo that I have in there. And voltage, select voltage. 7.4 is all it'll go, but that's fine. You know, this thing will work on 7.4, but I recommend that you use 11.1 volts. And of course, the more cells you have, the longer the battery will last. Here's the big thing you want to change right here, is you want to reverse the direction of the motor. The way that it comes from the factory, the motor's going to run actually backwards, so you would have to change the setting on the controller. So for the controller setting to work correctly and for the motor to work correctly, just reverse this direction. And motor type, you have a lot of them, but you want brushless, forward, reverse, delay. It's not going to tell you it's censored, but that works okay. Fan, you can leave it on or auto. And data erase. Again, I think for you to learn about all the options that this has, you should watch a video. And I'm going to apply this. And what that's going to do is when we run this thing, it's going to run in the right direction with the controller. So now that that's done, all you have to do is power this down. This is programmed. Pull this out, put your fan back together. Again, I recommend putting a little grease on there, so let's do that right now. Put a little grease on there. Dielectric grease is great for electrical connections, especially when you have two different kinds of metal going together. There we go. Now that's all hooked up. Now I'm going to turn the controller on and turn the power on. And this switch, you can either put it back on top of here or you can glue it to the upright. Well, you can put it anywhere you want to. I like to glue it to the standoff that holds your mounting plate. So we'll turn that on. Listen for it to buzz twice. And I have the controller set on normal. And steering, I don't think I mentioned either, is that you can see here that your steering is pretty straight, but there's an adjustment on the controller that you can adjust your servo. Okay, so when I turn this on, it's going in the right direction, going forward, and going reverse. And the way this is set up now, it's going to go a lot faster in forward than reverse. All right, that did it. We're done. We got it together.